My wife called me up. I was at Naval Branch Clinic, Ingleside, Texas. Stupidest place I ever went to in as a career. I was not meant to be in the blue side of the Navy. And I remember I was working physical exams when I get a panicked call from my wife. And she says, turn on the news. And I remember the very first words, and she still says to this day, so it begins. Those of us that had been deploying overseas, especially to Jordan, Saudi Arabia, all these places, we had seen this coming to some degree. I mean, first time I had heard of bin Laden was actually 1996 when we were over there. I mean, this was not, you could see the hate and discontent from certain people over there, and it was just a matter of time. I mean, World Trade Center wasn't the first time it had an issue. For those of us in those circles, we got it. And actually, at that time, I was at Central Texas College down in Corpus Christi doing my paramedic courses. And one of my professors actually asked me to start teaching a side course for them, effects of terrorism in EMS, because terrorism was this new thing to them. They hadn't even heard of it. So obviously that class got a lot of traction after 9/11, and I wasn't there to teach it anymore. So yeah, it was definitely a motivation. We knew where we were going. We knew what we needed to do. We were getting prepped for it. At the time, we were all oriented on Afghanistan. But yeah, it definitely kept you focused during the course. And the funny thing was, especially at like BRC, when we're down, back then it was in Coronado, we're doing the O course, and these things just designed to jump inside your head and take a big shit. The instructors are screaming at you. They read your jacket, and they'll know I came from a little clinic, and like, don't you want to go back to your air conditioning with all the nurses and everything else? And I'm like, absolutely not. Forget that place. I hated it there. And that motivated me more than they thought it was breaking me down. So I knew I was with the right people.
So October 03, you said you made it to first recon. If I'm not mistaken, they had just gotten back from Iraq.
Yeah, like weeks later before. I mean, most of the guys had just gotten back off post-deployment leave. Wasn't like any of the other commands. By that point, it would have been the third or fourth time I had hopped a command. Everybody knew, even though we hadn't had the emergency redeploy message yet, we knew we were going back sooner rather than later. One of the things that I always loved about, and I still try to incorporate some of this into business and things I do now, it was the most unique check-in procedure I ever had at a unit. Because they tasked I don't remember who he was. It was Corporal. He didn't end up deploying with us. But anyways, this Corporal grabs me up and says, all right, Doc, come with me. Walks me over to this supply shed. We get my ruck, get everything else. It was relatively efficient, but he says, all right, we got to move. So we're hoofing it across the compound. And I think it was either Lily or I don't remember who it was, but it was one of the guys who had just come back. Said, yeah, they want to see you before we break for lunch. So we haul in there, come skidding in. And they hand me an old paperback. And this was a Thursday, I want to say, Thursday or Friday. So it's coming up on the weekend. They're like, have that read by Monday and we'll be prepared to talk about it. I didn't even bother. I love reading. So I was like, all right, cool. That's kind of unique. I'd throw it in my cargo pocket next to my other paperback I already had. At lunch, I break it out and it's Gates of Fire by Pressfield. And they're like, that was something everybody read at the time. I don't know if they did it to other people after, or maybe they just a lark that day they did it, but that always had an impression on me that, yes, I just was issued my knife, I got my rifle, I got my ruck, all these tools of war, but we need your mind sharp as well. And that really resounded with me. So I do either that book or others. I try to do the same for guys down the road when I was in that position. Unfortunately, Hollywood screwed it up. They loosely did a movie adaptation called The 300. They are not even remotely connected, but people try to link the two. Pressfield does an amazing job of doing historical fiction to where, from a first-person perspective, you see a major event in history and takes some liberties, I'm certain, but at least paints a picture and immerses you in that environment. His, for this book, was the Battle of Thermopylae with the Spartans. And it gets really into what it took to develop young men into this culture of warriors, which was very fitting when you think about it for a young person coming into a team like that. And then goes into the concepts of brotherhood. And unfortunately, the whole Moan Lib and everything else that's been commercialized so much comes from those concepts, but it gives it a much purer sense of purpose.